السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل الله فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ونور قلوبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. قال سبحانه وتعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Verily all praise, all forms of gratitude is for Allah. We seek His forgiveness, we seek His guidance, and we seek refuge in Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the negative consequences of our actions and the evils that exist in our own souls. Whomsoever Allah ta'ala guides, nothing can lead astray, and whomsoever Allah ta'ala leads astray, nothing can guide. And in between those two statements is what we're grateful for, is guidance. All praise is due to Allah, and we are amongst, alhamdulillah, the guided, and may we die on that grace. And we testify that there's no deity that deserves to be worshipped in truth except Allah. There's no soccer player, there's no venerated thing, object, idea, ideology, etc. that deserves to be nearer to our hearts than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was his final messenger, his servant, who is our intercessor, who is our beloved, who is the light of our hearts and the coolness of our eyes. Allah ta'ala says in the Quran, O you who have attained faith, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Be mindful, be aware, be conscious, have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and do not die save that you're in a single state. That state of submission, that spiritual state of Islam. Inshallah, you guys made it out here. Try to, inshallah, have a fruitful but a reminding khutbah, nothing earth-shattering, nothing out of the norm, but something that's a foundational intersection. And I just want to remind you of 3 hadiths that I can guarantee you most all of you have heard before, but inshallah we can intersect those 3 hadiths. The first one is when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, الذي لا ينطق عن الهوى, he doesn't speak from his desires. He only speaks the one who's, Imam Shafi said, received 2 wahys. One is the Quran and 2 is his sunnah. So what he utters, and there's nothing more beloved than what he uttered, and nothing more beloved to follow than what he uttered. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, لا تحقرن من المعروف شيئا. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, don't demean anything that is ma'ruf, that is good, goodness, righteous, beautiful. Anything that is good, don't demean it to be insignificant. لا تحقرن من المعروف شيئا. Don't think that anything you do that is good is small. And why that's a very motivational idea is that Muslims have different capabilities, different abilities, different check sizes that you can write. And so for those on one end of the spectrum, it's not discouraging because it might be small relatively, but to you it's not small. Because if you gave $10 and that's all you had, you just gave everything you had away. But if you gave $10,000 and you're a millionaire, you gave a little. But don't deem anything that is good to be small. That's the first hadith. The second hadith is when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "An Amir al-Mu'mineen, Abi Hafsa, Umar radiallahu anhu said." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and this is how they start out, Imam Bukhari, etc. They start out a lot of Islamic books with this hadith, which you've probably learned beginning in Sunday school. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ إِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَىٰ. That every action you do is according to its intention. And everybody will get that which he or she intends. فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَةُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَهِجْرَةُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. That whoever migrates for Allah and His Messenger, he or she migrates for Allah and His Messenger. But whoever's migration is for the dunya, but anyone who migrates for the world, a worldly thing, or the hand of a lady, then he migrates whatever he migrates for. When it comes to Allah and His Messenger, it's repeated because it's significant. But when it comes to worldly things, it's not mentioned. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ. That's the second. That your actions are according to what you intend, and the place of intentions is your heart. And it's a silent calling. The third hadith. And so, before I move on, the intersection between the first one, don't deem anything to be small that is good, but it's only according to the intention, whether it's small or good, whether it's meaningful or not. The last hadith that I wanted to share was this, related from Anas when the Prophet ﷺ was approached by a man, and he said, Mata sa'a, when's the hour? And the Prophet ﷺ had what they call a wise response, but it's a redirective response. Partially, that's why it's wise. What we would say is answering a question with a question to steer the questioner in a particular direction. So when he asked, Ya Rasulullah, when's the hour? When's Yawm al-Qiyamah? Like, when's overtime and I have to get my game on? Like, when things going down, right? When should I be at my best? The Prophet ﷺ said, what did you prepare for it? That was the answering a question with a question. Almost like it doesn't matter when that event happens. What about you? And what have you done in your lifetime? And what legacy have you left behind? How many lives have you impacted? What's your relationship with God? How clean is your heart? And what's it? That's the focus, not this existential event. So the first hadith talks about things that even can be small. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, you perceive that it's a small thing you utter. هَيِّنًا وَهُوَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ عَظِيمٌ. You perceive what you utter to be a small thing, but in the sight of God, it's magnificent. It's huge. Just like in our tradition, when the righteous lady fasted during the days and prayed during the nights, but she just did one small thing to a cat. That one small thing took her to hell forever because she harmed an animal. But on the outward, all the big things of fasting and praying and living a lifestyle on the outward was a certain way. But you take the inverse of a woman who we'd say is indecent. An indecent woman on the outward, but she did one small thing in giving a starving, thirsty dog something to drink. One small thing in her entire lifetime. One small thing she happened to do in her lifetime, and it directed her heaven forever. And this is the intersection. That the smallest thing you could do is magnificent in the biggest thing with the biggest thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it's accepted. And that's where it intersects with the second hadith, that if your intention is there and is sound, and that's why Imam Shafi, and that's the school of thought I follow, is if you enter prayer and you say Allahu Akbar, you start your wudu with your hands and wash your face and finish through, and you didn't make an intention when you're saying Allahu Akbar, or where the water runs off your hands and begins onto your face, because that's the first part, that's a rukn in that particular opinion of wudu. You don't have wudu and you don't have a prayer. It's just hollow shell actions that you're doing without an intention. And that's how Imam Shafi, a great scholar, considered this hadith so profound and essential that nothing you do of ibadat without a corresponding intention to it is actually ibadat. You're literally going through an exercise gym without any reward to it because it's not valid in that particular opinion. So what we do, big or small, has to correspond with the sound intention. But don't diminish anything that's sound because the smallest thing, or that sound because the smallest thing in the sight of God, if it's accepted, how do you value it? And if you do the most grandiose thing that in the sight of God is rejected, wasn't pure, what's the value? It doesn't matter how much you gave away and how many orphanages and orphans you sponsored. What's the value of what you just did if it's not accepted by Allah Ta'ala? All these efforts that you might do, what's the value of them? In Surah Al-Kahf, it talks about that. يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. They think that they're doing good. They think that they're doing good. They gave all this money away, but the way they made the money in the first place was illegitimate.
It was by exploiting people, and etc. etc. You think you're doing something good, but it has no weight. Like those are the greatest. The converse or the inverse is true. With being mindful, of being aware. Like this is a modern idea that's historically prophetic. This idea of being aware of what you're doing, having this intention, calling it to place, and being aware of what you're doing, right? At least in our corporate, the whole idea of mindfulness and micro breaks. The Prophet ﷺ said that he never put a morsel to his mouth except that he could die before he finished, or that he would raise his leg up before he put it down, before he thought he would meet the angel of death. He's the epitome, the apex of consciousness. And then we look at ourselves and how are we in our own different states and different days and different years and different hours. There was a boy, we were in Konya over the summer in Turkey, and we were having a meal in our hotel, and we saw a young boy, probably the same age as my children, 10, 12 years old, and they were carrying a very heavy load of recyclable material because they collected on the street and they turned it in. Maybe he's a refugee from a war-torn country. Maybe his parents aren't there to help him. But he's walking and we see it, and it's hard work and it's hot. And so we gave my children, go run and catch him. Go outside and go and catch him and give him this. So they caught up with him and they gave it to him. We couldn't see him anymore, so my kids came back. And it was like $5, 100 liras, Turkish liras. It was like $5, $6. I said, what did he say? What did he do when you gave him that money? He said, he looked at us and he said, Allah. I said, what did he say? He said, Allah. Like, so when you gave him something, what's the first thing he thought of? This is a 10, 12-year-old boy who may or may not have parents, who's on the street collecting recyclable material. And he got something. And look at his condition. Who knows what preceded his lifestyle, what will come out. But what was the first thing he thought of when he was given something of a blessing? الحمد لله حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم يا ايها الذين امنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. Just that last part, كونوا مع الصادقين, be with those who are truthful. And this is the last hadith, right? Because we connected it from everything you do that is good, whether small or big, is profound. We have an ideal of small or big. There's no difference. Small or big, when it's good, it's profound, but it has to be coupled with a sincere intention. And with that, the last piece is, what did you prepare for? And that's for us to look at. We have the first things, whether it's big or small, but we're sound and sincere, then what have we done with that as the last step? Think about it for a minute. How old are you? How much time do you have left? Do you think you have left? And what have you done? So when you're at Sakratul Maut, the pains of death, and you're looking back on your life, Ya Allah, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready for the stage to enter the only gateway to move on. Forever. For a moment, think about what you have accomplished from your legacy. What have you prepared for? And day in and day out, what are you preparing for? And there are so many things, if we just thought for a minute, some of us I'm sure do, outside of ourselves and outside of the rat race, There was a sister who helps with refugees on the ground, very beautiful person. And she was telling my wife that she went to these families and she would meet them and she would go in and it would be freezing in their homes, in their apartments that they got. And she realized and learned that it was a choice for them, these families and children, that they had to choose between food and heat. And they chose food. But they didn't have things in their homes that comforted them like blankets. And she said, that's the need. And she said, I actually stepped into their home and I accidentally stepped on the foot of one of the children and it broke my heart because when I accidentally stepped on the child's foot with my foot, it was a frozen. There is incredible, and like the Prophet would not have this in his own. And just think, we have to think about outside of ourselves for a minute, or a moment, or beyond that. Because there are, in our own backyards, there are dire needs. And you saw how it was just to walk here, and this is warm. Our cars are warm. Our children do not have frozen feet. And all it takes, and all it took, was a little message sent out to a group of caring Muslims who said they need some blankets, who's willing to pitch in? And then a week later, families have blankets and have places to sleep and have beds and mattresses. That's all it took. But it took a connection of awareness to what the state of your brothers and sisters are going through with people who have a heart that's believing. I remember when I was 10 or 12, and I came from Spokane, there was one brother, we weren't very affluent at all, one single parent and 6 kids. And there was a lot of people who came to the universities from oil-rich countries overseas. And it was interesting for me as a 10, 11-year-old, because I would see the state of my own shoes and the clothes I had, etc. And I would see them buying multiple sports cars because they wanted a different color. Exact same sports car, but blue instead of red. And it was confusing to me. But there was one brother named Muhammad, may Allah bless him and reward him. All he did one evening, and I've mentioned this here probably a few years ago because it still sticks with me today. He took me and my brothers to Pizza Hut. We got stuffed crust pizza, I think, for the first time. And then he took us to Payless shoe store to get us some shoes. All it was, and he gave us some money to give to our mom when he dropped it. All he did, and this is ma'at to that. What did you prepare for it? All he did was spend an evening of his college days with some kids that he didn't have a relationship to, but saw they needed a particular need. And he spent that evening and he took them to take care of basic needs just for an evening. And 30 years later, I'm telling you about that evening. What have you prepared for the hour? Whose lives have you impacted such that when you move on, they'll pay it forward? It's being prophetic in your care and your concern. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, and talking about the believers, al-mu'minun wal-mu'minat, ba'dhum awliya'u ba'd, that the believing men and the believing women, they're mutual allies, they are close friends for each other. In Surah At-Tawbah, and if you turn the page or look back on the page on the right-hand side, it'll talk about the munafiqun wal munafiqat, ba'dhum min ba'd. It doesn't say awliya, because when you're a nifaq, hypocrisy, you have no friends. The definition is you're two-faced. You have no real friends, because with this friend you're one face, and with that friend you're a different face. And that's why Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, He doesn't use awliya, ba'dhum min ba'd. They're from each other. But when it comes to the believers, we're awliya, we're friends and allies and assisters for one another. They command to good. يأمرون بالمعروف ينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة ويطيعون الله ورسوله أولئك سيرحمهم الله. They are the ones who command to goodness, ma'ruf, goodness. They forbid things that are foul and vain. They establish prayer. They give their zakah. And they obey God and His messenger. Those are the ones who Allah will shower with His mercy. That's us. That's what we're supposed to be. Brothers and sisters who are mutual allies. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to embody this reality of a congregation. I'll end on this note. And it has to do with that last hadith. I remember listening to Dr. Sherman Jackson when he came here. And he said two things that were profound. He said, one, about this life and our existence. He said, and he's a very emphatic African-American, strong professor at, I believe, UCLA, but he's a very emphatic, powerful speaker, and you can feel his sincerity in his word. And all these things going around out there, injustices and fight and causes, it's one, ain't no one getting away with anything. Ain't no one getting away with anything on this. We're all in this together, ain't no one getting away with anything. Everything you do, there will be hisab. There will be accountability. And it'll be for you or against you. Ain't no one getting away with anything. So don't feel too bad about people who are doing bad things. It's going to catch up for them. They should stop for their own good. The second thing he said, which we know, but ain't no one getting out of here alive. Ain't no one getting out of here alive. So what did you prepare for that moment? What did you prepare for that moment? It's not from a shortage of opportunities or causes. But start looking, if you're not doing it, for opportunities, just like you might look at career pivots. Start looking for things that will be forever and affect you forever and affect people forever. You don't know, Sheikh Tamimi Ahmed, one person, it was his grandma. All it was he was getting in trouble, and it was his grandma that was like, leave him alone, he's mine. And now he's a great sheikh, a great, beautiful soul with lots of a compound and a school and a madrasa in California. All it was his grandma shielding him when he was getting into a little bit of trouble. It just takes one person. And look at the Prophet ﷺ. One person. And when you're sitting in Medina and looking at all the faces from every place on earth and every color and every tongue, it just took one person. Just one person to make a difference in the eternal souls and salvation and on earth and forever in the lives of people. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to be those people who make a difference in the lives of others and have sincere intentions and don't deem things small or big, but know that it's what's accepted that matters. And be people who have an impact and have prepared for our own fate, for our own eternity. Inna Allah wa malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في المال الأعلى إلى يوم الدين اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا واغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك قريب مجيب دعوات اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا برحمتك شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك إنه لا يذل من وليت ولا يعز من عاديت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك ولك الحمد ولك الشكر على ما قضيت صلى الله على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. After the salah, we have a salatul janazah for Brother Muhammad Ilyas, 52 years old.
الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله حمده. الله أكبر. الله الله أكبر.
Allah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, as Sheikh Hathem announced, we'll have just prepare for Salatul Janaza. So inshallah, we'll get started. And after that, you can maybe complete your Sunnah prayer, and we can also pray Asr at 2:04, 2:03 is the Azan today. So while you are here, we can pray Asr at 2:03. So a few things. Game night was supposed to happen today. They postponed it to tomorrow. So inshallah, it will be tomorrow by Ummah Coffee. All of our regular halakas, Sunday tafsir will resume by Sheikh Jaban on January 15th. Muslim Experience Halaka will resume January 6th. And MAPS basketball for boys and girls is starting January 2nd. So you can register, inshallah, your kids for the basketball. And MAPS Seattle is having a series of talk on understanding depression. They have 3 parts series starting on Wednesday, 4th of January, inshallah. So let's prepare for Salatul Janazah. Barakallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the janazah will come here. So if we can vacate the first 5 rows, Jazakumullah khair, please. Vacate the first 5 rows so we can bring the janazah forward. Jazakumullah khair. We don't need to make sujood in the janazah, so it's all right if we need to double the rows. It's okay. Yeah, right there is. And if we can have some volunteers remove the carpets up from the front so that we can bring the janazah. Jazakumullah khair. The name of the deceased, apologize, is Muhammad al-Tahir. Muhammad al-Tahir. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. To Allah we belong, to Allah we will return. This is a reminder for all of us of the, as Brother Hassen also mentioned in his khutbah, about the limited nature of this life. And that all of us, our time will come eventually. So the most that we can do is to prepare for that moment with good deeds and by working together on that what is good and righteous. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on the deceased. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on his family. So for the Salatul Janazah, we have 4 takbirat, 4 times Allahu Akbar. After the first takbir, we recite Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, just like in the Salah. After the second takbir, we recite Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad, just like we do in the prayer. After the third takbir, we make dua for the deceased. At the minimum, Allahumma arhamhu, or you can make the whole dua if you know it. And then after the fourth takbir, we make salam. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. The burial will be in Covington, in the House of Mercy. House of Mercy in Covington. On Tuesday. At 1 o'clock. On Tuesday at 1 o'clock, we'll be in Covington at House of Mercy.